This past Friday, the Ford government dropped a bombshell when they expected no one to be looking. My name is Robin Lennox. I'm a family doctor turned MPP from Hamilton Centre and a member of the Ontario NDP. So what was the bombshell announcement all about? It centered really on the legislation that governs freedom of information requests. Now, freedom of information requests are one of the most critical tools that we have to get information about what the government is doing, who's benefiting, and who is involved. Freedom of information requests are most often submitted by journalists, by members of the opposition, and can be submitted by members of the general public to try to access government records that are otherwise very difficult to know about. Now, you might be asking, why do we need freedom of information requests? Isn't the government obligated to tell us what they're doing and why because there are elected representatives? You would think so, that would be the very basics. But unfortunately, this government lies like the rest of us drink water. And what Ford and his cabinet ministers are planning to do is exempt themselves from freedom of information requests, meaning that nothing that the Premier's office does or a cabinet minister's office does is going to be subject to our basic right to be able to know what our government is up to. Now, the timing of this should be a huge red flag for all of us, because if you remember, FOIs were responsible for the Greenbelt scandal. They were responsible for what we learned about the Skills Development Fund being used as a slush fund for Conservative donors and insiders. After neither of those two things did we hear about this proposed change in legislation. But just 2 months after the Premier's cell phone records were deemed eligible for FOIs because he uses his personal cell phone for government business, now we're hearing that the Premier is going to retroactively exempt himself from submitting to FOIs for his personal records. Now, this is very important because the Premier is already under investigation from the RCMP for the Greenbelt. If already having been under investigation for political financial crimes is not a triggering enough reason for him to do this 3 years ago, why is he doing it now? The fact that right now, when his cell phone records are about to be released, they're actually retroactively changing legislation is a huge red flag that what's ever in those cell phone records is worse than the corruption we've already seen. Now, no matter who you vote for or whichever political party you support, I think we can all agree that our political representatives are meant to be accountable to us and that they should not be able to make themselves exempt from the law. Now, they announced their plans on Friday, but the earliest opportunity they would have to actually table it and try to pass it is when the spring session starts on March 23rd. So between now and then, please take this opportunity to call the Premier's office, call the cabinet minister's offices, call your local MPP and tell them that this is purely unacceptable. They have rolled back terrible ideas in the past when they had huge public outcry. Let's make that happen again here.